Hey guys, before we get started, I wanted you to click on the link below to get a free copy of the Nevada Edge Guide. This guide is packed full of information about the benefits of Nevada LLCs and the tax strategies, all about using Nevada entities. Full of information that'll benefit you and your personal life. Just click the link below.
Welcome to another edition of Wealthy and Wise. I'm your host, Adam Kintigh, Executive Business Analyst here at NCH. And we've got a very special guest with us today. Part of what NCH has done over the many years is help business owners with both their business credit and personal credit. And for those, I've been through, I think, 3 recessions, and all these times business owners generally can take some risk, and it may affect their personal credit. And there's a great value in knowing how your personal credit works with your business credit, what we can and can't do with great credit and with bad credit. So we have with us today Marshall Davis, who is an expert on both of these things. And Marshall, how long have you been working with business owners on credit?
Probably a greater portion of 15, 20 years now.
Fantastic. And in all those years, you've been through the same thing here at NCH, ups and downs with the economy and various things going on. It's important for everyone to know, how does your business credit and personal credit work together? Are they two completely separate things, or can one help or hurt the other?
Great question. So when you talk about credit as a whole, they're looking at the same risk factors, if you would. They're looking at ability to pay, history, and how well you've performed with credit. So in the arena of business credit, it's completely separate of personal credit, which is a huge piece for a lot of new business owners. Maybe you've had some challenges in your past that you're not all that, happy about, or you don't want on public view. Business credit is solely based on how well the business is performed with managing its own credit, just like you do for your personal credit. Can one complement the other? Definitely. But first and foremost, I think it's important to understand, well, what are the factors that are being measured in personal credit, and how do they contribute to business credit? When you talk about what do you need, right? What's the need of the business? Generally speaking, most businesses are needing money, right? Depending on how long they've been around, how much they've committed to building a credit profile, if they've built a credit profile, all of those factors are still measured, just like with personal credit, on how will you perform and how can I validate you're a good risk. Business credit defines that. It speaks to business lending. It doesn't speak to personal credit, which is really predicated on how long have you had good credit, how many accounts. They look at the mixture of those accounts. They look at consistency and on-time payments. And then that is factored into, well, how much can you afford, right? So when you look at business versus personal, they complement each other quite well. But the bigger portion of it is that as a business owner, you don't want to sacrifice your personal credit. Why? Sometimes business doesn't go as you expected. And as a new business, a lot of expenses come about. So business credit allows you the opportunity to take some of those regular day-to-day expenses and put them where they belong, to the business. But the real relation is most people start a business using their personal credit, which isn't a bad idea. But, in most cases, it may cause a few challenges to you personally overall. Now I can't go out and potentially go and get the new car I wanted because now I'm using my credit to support my business, which means my balances may be a bit higher. I may show more debt than most lenders want to see. So you definitely want to separate the two of them. And again, depending on what the needs of the business and when those needs come about, that's when you can make the decision, do I want to apply my personal credit in this scenario? And then more importantly, really understand the benefit that it's going to drive, knowing that you also have business credit, which is also a validator on credit worthiness.
Awesome. So I look back when I was first getting started with credit. I went to school at Iowa State, and it was my sophomore year. I go into the student union, I come out, and I'm with my 2 roommates, Court and Matt. And Court's in the Marines, Matt's in the Army. And as we're walking out from getting our books, all these tables at the student union apply for credit cards.
Oh.
So as you walk through, they're yelling out, apply for this card, apply for whatever. And some lady yells out, apply for a MasterCard. And I was thinking in my head, I have no way am I going to go get declined in front of my friends. Not going to happen. I didn't have any credit. And the lady yells out, free 5-pound bag of M&Ms. I rush over there and I fill out the application. And I'm trying to answer it honestly. It said, what is your annual household income? I said, hey, Matt, how much is your income? How much is your income? I know I was making. So I wrote that down. And I'm not kidding you. 3 days later, I had in the mail, my very first credit card was a gold MasterCard for $10,000.
Nice.
I thought that's amazing. And again, I had no credit previously. So one of the things that it made me think of is when you're applying for personal credit cards, generally what documentation do they want to see?
Oh, that's a great question. And you know what's funny? Credit is always introduced or disguised in a lot of ways in that manner. At the airport, hey, would you like to, get 1,000 frequent flyer miles or 10,000 frequent flyer miles? And what you're not really being advised of is that once I sign this paperwork, I'm committing to an inquiry, right? They're going to take a peek at my credit, which means that's going to drive my score down a little bit. And the easiest thing to understand about credit is that what are the real factors that are being measured? So for individuals that don't have any credit, well, who's going to give credit to those that don't have? There's a ton of companies that are out there that will give you access based on a few factors, right? Age is obviously a big factor. You have to be at least 18 or better. Then income, obviously, is another factor. Once you have that initial credit card, right? Hopefully you have good habits, quote unquote. I can remember my first credit card and didn't go all that well because I wasn't all aware of how it really worked, like most. But in that, the factors that are really measured is one, how well do you use the credit, right? Usage is a big driver. It's the biggest driver, if you would, of credit decisions. How well do you manage the funds that you're given access to? And keeping in mind, when you talk about credit, we're talking about supplemental income. You don't use credit for your day-to-day purposes. This is for those large limit spends, the just in case, if you would. Usage is one, and most would say that 30% is the mark. I would say be under 30%, right?
All right, so here's the important question. If I got a credit card and I'm working on trying to repair my credit, restore my credit, or build my credit personally, do I need to carry a balance month to month in order for me to get increases on my credit cards?
Ooh, that's the common myth, right? That if I don't carry a balance, then I'm looking lean in credit. Truth be told, carrying a balance isn't a negative in most cases. Truth be told, as long as you're within that usage of 30% or less, it's favorable, right? And truth be, again, not a big impact to your credit as long as you stay under that threshold. But the minute you go over it, now you start to teeter into the risk area, if you would. So is it healthy to pay your balances in full? Definitely, right? Is it okay to carry a balance? As long as you're aware of what that percentage is, that's okay too. I think the biggest driver and that's really looked at again is are you making on-time payments? Because they're really trying to gauge, is that your real habit? And then history is another big factor because, well, the longer that you've performed well with credit, the more likely that you're going to continue that behavior. So, when you look at to carry a balance or not, I would say stay below the threshold, and then more importantly, most of all, make sure you're on time.
So use it, pay it off. Use it, pay it off is the best practice, obviously.
The best practice.
And if I have to carry a balance, so I always talk to my clients about building business credit is one side of the coin, and then the personal credit is the other side. And having good, we call it the 80-800 club, where you've got an 80 Paydex, an 800 FICO, and life is good at that point because you get the best interest rates on everything you do. But sometimes when a brand new business is starting, having a co-signer with good personal credit can really help get the business Visa, MasterCard, and Amex during that first couple years when you don't have a track record. Your business is just starting, don't have financials, don't have tax returns, don't have anything that a bank wants to see. So with that in mind, if I'm giving my personal guarantee, I'm able to then get a business card, and if done right, is not going to report on my personal credit report. So that is what you were sharing with me earlier, as having those things separate. So talk more about how that works with these business cards and personal cards, and if I have good personal credit, how that can help me.
Okay, great question, by the way. And you made a very, very specific comment that is very necessary. So, when you talk about personal credit, you can use personal credit to really give your business that big jump that you need, right? Given the example that you've explained, when you talk about large limit lending, especially in business, I would say $50,000 as a startup business is considered large limit. With good, strong personal credit, they're looking at, one, of course, how long you've done it. And the more history, the better, because that helps me understand how well you'll perform if I have to put you on a 5-year loan, right? But the ways that you can use good personal credit, it's kind of unique in the business credit realm in the effect that if I use the right business credit cards, meaning cards that will report to the business credit bureau and not me personally, I can use my personal credit to secure those balances and then use them organically as the business needs to really show that my business can make on-time payments. And the real benefit in that is that I'm not showing those balances on my credit. So I get to save my credit, if you would. But meanwhile, that personal guarantor is what most will use to really allow them that access. And the one beautiful part about being a guarantor is like, I don't have to worry about this reflecting on my personal credit, right? So a lot of new businesses will use that vehicle to secure the funds that they need. And in most cases, if you do it well enough, there's balance transfer options that you can exercise, but more importantly, skin in the game, right? And that allows you to secure more. And when you talk about how much can you secure when you use personal credit, well, first and foremost, keep in mind what credit is all about. It's about measuring risk to show that you can afford the debt that you're trying to secure. From there, how much can you afford? Well, that's going to be predicated on how much money is in place. So if it's based on the business, well, how much income are you generating to allow us to formulate how much debt the business has to equate this is what you can afford based on the percentage charge that I'm applying. On the personal credit side, same rules. The only real challenge in personal credit versus business is that your income is your ceiling, right? And in some instances, you may not make enough to supply the needs that the business has. Meaning, I need $200,000, but maybe I'm only making $110,000, and I'm already carrying 30% debt. Well, nobody's going to really give me that amount because I can't really prove that I can afford it based on how much is in play. So you use it as a catalyst, if anything, never really as a foundation.
So if I have a client right now who is buying a new business, e-commerce business, and she went through the SBA route of looking for the SBA lending, and I know you have some tricks and tips for that part of it, but assuming that the business isn't such that we have financial statements and all the pieces that a bank would want to look at, how could a person like that, or what criteria would they need to go get a couple credit cards, maybe 2 or 3 Visa, MasterCard, or Amex that can cover that gap to help us with that $80,000, $90,000 getting started purchase? How would you recommend, or what would someone be looking for if they were in that position?
Well, again, remembering that the annual income, I'm using my personal information, I got to show that I can afford the debt until my business can take over those on-time monthly payments. But generally speaking, there's tons of ways to secure money, right? Credit card applications, business or personal, go through the same exact process. The difference being in the business credit realm, they're basing it off the industry of the business. What are the risk factors based on what you do as a business? Because that's going to tell me if in fact your industry performs well enough for you to be able to get business up and running and generate the profit that you want, right? So when you look at it from that, they're looking at what are the risk factors based on you being a real estate investor or being a truck driver or whatever industry that you're associated with. The personal credit piece simply just says that I can afford the debt and I can show you how well I've performed over the years. So it's honestly relatively easy to secure credit cards in the business's name as a guarantor. But again, I think the bigger trick would be making sure that you understand where those cards report, right? So as an example, Chase Inc. is a great card. Chase Sparks, great card. Wells Fargo has a couple of good credit lines. Even American Express. But the reality is that most business credit cards like that don't report to a business credit profile. So a lot of business owners will get in the mindset that I have business credit because I've personally guaranteed it with my bank. Essentially, that's a business credit line that you're permanently attached to, right? And then when you look at the bigger picture, as rates increase and things to that effect, well, you're still liable for everything solely because of the fact that it's based off of you to start. So the trick is that I want to use credit cards that I know are going to report only to my business. I'm okay with sacrificing my credit to secure it, but I don't want to show up on the radar. I don't want anyone to look at me. So in that, I like to use American Express Business Cash. I actually have one for my business. Great credit line, reports solely to the business so I can use it at a good frequency and show them credit worthy. And essentially, it doesn't take a long period of time for me to get to that space where I'm going after $80,000, $90,000. But the one thing I gotta do is I have to prove that, one, I'm able to handle it. I've done it well in the past. And then more importantly, based on the factors of my industry, I'll have a successful business. I've done the homework. And little pieces like building a credit profile, honestly, what it really does is it creates another avenue so that a year from now, I don't want to have to be the one signing on the dotted line to get the credit card. I want my business to do so. And then the other part.
Hang on a second. So you're telling me that my business can go out and get a business Visa, MasterCard, or Amex, or a bank loan of some kind without my personal guarantee?
As long as your business can show that it can validate and pay for its debt, you can get as much as you can on the business side, just equally as on the person.
And how long does that normally take before a business owner is in that position?
Well,
1 year, 2 years, 5 years?
If the business has money, the moment that they can show income, then that means that they can show an ability to pay. It's all based on W-2s, lost profit statements, anything that they can see physically to show, yes, there's invoices coming in to generate income. Those are all factors that they use. 90 days, a couple of weeks, if you would, as long as they can show that there's a history of on-time payments and good habits and money, there's lending. But if you're one of those new businesses like most where you don't have a ton of resources at your disposal, you did use your personal credit to get started. Well, now what do I do when I need the additional funds to move things? There's alternate lending, but building a business credit profile essentially allows you, one, every time that I get access to a new account without any personal information, I'm accumulating balances. And every time that I have one of those companies vouch for me and saying that I do the right thing with the line of credit, that puts me closer and closer to money. So if I'm in that setting with no money and I'm really just trying to get the foundation established and build, I would say a reasonable time would be 6 months. That allows you to get an A rating, as you would with your personal credit. Essentially I want to be a 700 or better as a credit score. That way when I do access money, well, I want a good term, right? I need a good term because I may be in a term of 5 years, so I don't want the highest rate for the 5-year stint. I want to make sure I get the best rate possible. So I'm going to build a credit profile, and the secret is you can probably get an A credit rating in most cases in 45 days at least with Dun & Bradstreet. But from there, I'm going to cycle that through the other major business credit bureaus so that everybody says the same thing about me. You pay on time every single time, and that is where lending happens. And if you do it well enough in the right circles with the right accounts, well, that time could get shorter and shorter because now I'm showing accounts with Synchrony Bank, American Express, Lowe's Amex. These are heavily weighted accounts. And if I'm going to lend to you, I want to see that you can secure tough accounts just as easy as the easy accounts. And that is where you get the terms, more importantly, the rate, especially in today's climate with rates climbing every quarter, if you would.
Yeah, so the last thing I want to cover is I was talking to you, I remember a few weeks ago, and I said I was worried because the interest rates are going up, and they're talking about slowing down the inflation. And as these rates go up, I started thinking, well, how is that impacting the limits? Because there's ups and downs and how much the limits are that these credit card companies will give people. And your response to me was, Adam, they're giving more money. And I was shocked. So over the past few months, you've seen the actual limits on these credit cards that the banks are issuing have gone up?
You know what's interesting, with so much risk flying around, To answer the question, yes. But with so much risk flying around, you would assume that everything gets tighter. The water gets tighter, the lenders get tighter. But in all actuality, it's quite the opposite, right? Well, lenders are able to make more money now, right? It's a higher rate. Why wouldn't I have a high amount of approvals? I want to take advantage of it. This is my time to shine. And, essentially, building business credit, strong personal credit, all of these factors combined, believe it or not, banks actually use. It's called what is a liquid score, right? The SBFSS score. And it's a combination of all credit that you touch as a business owner, personally. All these factors are accumulated and they come to a score, right? And that min score is 155, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a tough score to get to. And if you don't have all of these other factors, Dun & Bradstreet, business experience, business Equifax, good, strong personal credit, if you don't have a whole bunch of those contributing to the score, more times than none, you're going to get that generic decline that most banks give you, because when you go to a bank, you got to be highly qualified. I'm looking for strong revenue, I'm looking for good credit history, and I'm looking for lengthy credit history before I consider you. But in the current climate, just as an example, obviously I talk to a ton of clients every day, right? And it was overwhelming to hear how many people have gone to Bank of America, of all places, and gotten healthy limits approved at a time where everything is questionable. And the reasoning behind that is because with a strong business credit profile, it's going to speak to the industry and its performance. So that's where I get to make the decision as a lender issuing bank on, well, what's the risk factors of your industry and how much can I approve you based on what I see that you can afford? And in most cases, the business credit profile does such a good job of really identifying those risk factors that it simplifies it for the underwriters, right? And even more importantly, Dun & Bradstreet will even take it a step further. They'll give you a credit recommendation to help those lenders out to understand that, hey, based on all of the factors for the guys that understand credit than the average bear, this is what we say is a safe starting spot. And honestly, most of the clients that we work with, they start out in the $22,000 to $30,000 range, and that's less than 6 months in business. So if you understand the intimate details of each industry and their risk factors and what they can do for you from a credit standpoint, you can really navigate who to apply to and even almost gauge how much you can get as an end result.
Excellent. So you have a whole team that does not only the personal credit enhancement to help clean up blemishes and improve scores, but you also have the team on the backside that does the business credit as well. So just about anything anybody needs when it comes to credit, you and your team, you are the ones to go to help get funding, whether it's bad credit, good credit, whatever it may be. And I also know that recommendations, for example, if I go to the bank and I said that I was a real estate investor, what do? I flip houses. The bank is going to look at that. High risk. But if I can modify my wording a little bit, and now I go to the bank and I say, I am a single family home remodeler, I'm now looked at as, oh, it's a low risk business. It's just a matter of how you say what you're looking to do. And I know that's something you and your team specialize in.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, one thing I've always said about our process, we are credit. That's one thing I can honestly say. We talk about everything encompassing credit. And, and with that, one, I would venture to say our physical outcome is not as great as what we do for business owners, new business owners. Being realistic, 80% don't make it out their first year because they don't understand what they really get themselves into. And the biggest driver of that is access to capital, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, any information that you can gather on a consistent basis to help you make smart credit decisions allows you to avoid being a part of that community. And then more importantly, once you start to understand how business money moves, the sky's the limit. But you've got to understand the intimate details of how to access it, what not to do, what to do, so that you can capitalize on the bulk of it. It is a simple example, and I'll leave with this. The pre-approved credit card, the pre-approved funding for up to $250,000. And, I have a business and I'm building credit and it allows me to really relate to our client base as we go through the process. But more importantly, I get a boatload of those informations too, right? And I think at last check, I collected them all up. It was about $200,000 that I was pre-approved for. But if you don't understand how that really works, one of two things could happen. One, you damage your personal credit, or two, you just constantly get declined because you don't know what the real factors are. So we take the time to really break down credit as a whole. And I would say 90% of our time is not really answering questions on how we do what we do. It's about how we manage credit and how to get around the loopholes. How do I get closest to money? How do I avoid this? That is invaluable.
Fantastic. Well, Marshall, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're a busy guy. For those of you, make sure you like, subscribe, share if you like the information. Give Marshall's team a call. Call NCH. We are happy to help with any questions you have about personal credit, business credit. Make sure you're doing things right, and like Marshall said, avoid those little mistakes. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.